market, find out when the agent's going to review offers, and then I take my time because we've usually got 2-3 days. So I'm not worried about getting my offer first in. I'm going to make sure that we're really like squeezing all the juice out of it that we can. Sometimes I'm calling the agent a second time after they've received offers for a couple of days to see how it's maybe changed the offer dynamic. But I showed a property on Saturday. It was an open house. The agent was holding his own open. Client started walking through. I saw an opportunity to hang out and talk to the agent. And so that's what I did. And we talked about his clients, we talked about the property, but then that conversation was able to morph into this market and how he's feeling about it. This agent's been in the market or been in the industry for 30+ years. He said a few key things in the conversation. He said, I really don't want to review 30 offers on this property. I mean, I can't say for sure, but I'll typically tell my clients, we get an offer and we should review it right now. We don't need to wait for more offers to come in. So I went outside after we finished the open house, and in quiet tones, because I didn't need everybody else in the open house to hear, I said, hey guys, this is the situation. We're not going to see any more properties right now. I'm going to go write this offer. Let's get this submitted now. We have an opportunity to get this reviewed before we're competing with 30 other offers. Within 2 hours, the offer was submitted. We were under contract, and for only $10,000 above list price, which rocked my brain. So, so listen to that. Like, use the information you get from that agent to inform them. I would typically never stop a showing to go write an offer, to get it submitted right away while the agent is still in the open house, because they're not going to look at it for 2 days. So that doesn't make sense. But when you get that information, use it. And those are also, like, when you get that information, convey it to your client. Share with them when you're doing that kind of recon. This is a part of the value that we bring to the clients. And so often I see that agents are bringing value, but they are not expressing that value. And so their clients have no idea. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. I love it when a client says to me, I really thought that a real estate agent had an easy job. It's incredible how much you do. Like, I love that, because that's a fixed belief that they had that's been shattered. And I know that that's not a client that then is at risk to go to a Homey or a Zillow or thinking they're going to do it themselves, writing an offer on a FSBO. And when they go to sell, I know that they're going to look at that and go, I know what my agent did when we were working on the buying side. There's no way I want it to be on the other side without that representation. So,
Robin, can I ask you a question real
yeah.
quick? This is awesome. So what are your thoughts around, so obviously there may have been an agent out there, let's say in your scenario, that was like, we have 2 days to put our offer in, and then Robin comes in and says, and we know the language nowadays, a lot of people are saying, hey, if we offer you this right now, we're willing to put this on the table, if you tell us right now, you'll accept our offer. So what are your thoughts around, I get like maybe waiting a couple days where the seller isn't going to respond for this much time, but still staying in the picture.
Yeah,
where you aren't left.
You've got to, I mean, you've really got to, it just comes back to that piece of being in communication with the agent. And here's the thing, we are all in this market together. Like, the more you can align with the agent that you're talking to, and they're dealing with the same kind of craziness that you are. Chances are they are representing some buyer and having to go through the same battle that you are. And even if they're not, there's a perception, I think, for agents that are working with buyers that listing agents have it easy. It is hard in this market working with listings too. You are feeling like, I know when we go live, my phone will not stop ringing from 6 in the morning until, y'all, I have somebody call me at midnight wanting to confirm that I received their offer. I wanted to choke them to death. So it's crazy. It's crazy for all of us. And so the more you can just align with that, and I would just ask them, like, when are you reviewing offers? And they say, oh, we're going to review Monday at 5. I'd push on that a little bit. Okay, so let's say you get the world's greatest offer and they give you a shorter deadline. Any chance you think you're going to review faster than that? No, we're really not reviewing until Monday at 5. Okay, Carol, I know where you office out of. If you were to submit our offer on Monday morning, but if I hear you accepted one before Monday at 5, I might show up at your office, Carol, and we might have words. Make it laugh a little bit, but also like stand out, like, oh, I can't accept that offer because Robin will show up at my office. So it's okay. If you get that offer, just call me. Just call me first. Just have those conversations. I have an agent friend in Arizona that that shot me a text. It was a screenshot of a conversation he had with another agent. And he said, you know, I know that this property is going to come in above list price, but how high are we talking? Are we talking Snoop Dogg high? Or are we talking, who's the old hippie deadhead guy? Anyway, this high. And the agent sent back a GIF of Seth Rogen with a big marijuana leaf behind him. And he's like, ooh, that high. And then the agent said, oh, that's the best laugh I've had all day. They talked back and forth about the offer. Guess whose offer got accepted? Like, I am not advocating send marijuana GIFs out to every listing agent. I'm just saying, like, be a real human being, acknowledge that we're in this craziness together, figure out who it is that you're talking to, talk to them in the way that they need to be talked to, and don't be afraid to push for all the information. Yeah. Okay, so jumping forward, so you covered contact listing agent, evaluate client risk tolerance. One thing with risk tolerance, when you're talking about this wonderful appraisal gap coverage, be familiar with the loan program your client is working with, and if they are putting down the lowest amount of down payment that they can, or if they have funds that are available to them that are not being used for the down payment, or if the lender is using, like, say, a 10% down conventional loan, but if needs be, they could drop down to a 5%, or a 5% conventional loan, and they could drop down to a 3%. And you don't need to know everything that there is about every loan program out there. You just need to talk to your lender. Again, it just comes back to that communication piece. So, you know, hey, listen, you have these guys pre-qualified. This is what you're planning on them putting down, correct? Yes. Okay. Let's say we get into a situation that they're having to cover this appraisal gap. Do you need all of those funds, or would it be possible to flip them into a program where they had a lower down payment, freeing up some of those funds for them? The reason I like to always do that with the buyers is that buyers are looking at having to come out of pocket with more money than they were planning on, which is kind of a necessary evil in this market. But there are times that they could look at coming out of pocket with the same amount of money and just restructure things if the case calls for it. So that way I can maybe offer an appraisal gap coverage where we wouldn't be able to otherwise, or I can extend that appraisal gap coverage. You know, maybe they only have $10,000 in hand, but the lender says, yeah, if needs be, I could move this around, I could do this, we could absorb some of their closing costs, bump the rate a little bit, blah, 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 blah. That would free up another $10,000 here. Okay, now I can offer a $20,000 appraisal gap coverage, which is going to be a lot more enticing without pushing past what my client was planning on doing in the first place. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. So let me look at my notes so that I don't get totally when you talk to your clients about the offer that they're putting in, it's important that you prepare them for what your competition will likely be. You know, part of it in this market is identifying what is the house worth to them, what do they want to offer. But in this market, it's also, okay, so we will likely be competing with offers that are offering non-refundable earnest money. This is what that looks like. How do you feel about that? Like, it is not your job to decide if that is what they want to do or don't want to do. It's just your job to present all of the options and to make sure that they understand that's what you're going to be competing with. And then if they don't want to put down that non-refundable earnest money, if they're not comfortable with that, to say, you know, that's okay. Let's look at these other features and see maybe how we could offset if another buyer is. So you're talking strategy with them at that point and juggling those factors back and forth. And that's another good thing to talk to the listing agent about is, you know, what are you seeing with your current offers? Like, if they have offers in hand, I cannot stress to you enough, ask them about them. We get really caught up in, like, they're not supposed to tell me any details. It's not your fault if they tell me any details. So ask, like, are you seeing offers come through with appraisal gap coverage? How does your client feel about that? When you ran the comps, what do you think about the appraisal? I know nobody can predict where those are going to come in, but what kind of coverage are you thinking that we're going to need? Are you seeing offers come with escalation clauses? How do you feel about those? Like, ask the questions. And then that way, like I said, you're prepared to review that with your client and see what it is you're going to be competing against. And then whenever they get to, like, what the bottom line is that they want to offer, I just always like to tell them, like, you want to, in this market, offer the very best terms that you would be happy with on this property. Because at the end of the day, if we don't get it, we know somebody who's willing to pay more than the house was worth to you, or they were willing to cover terms that you weren't comfortable doing. And so then we can feel good about it, because to get it, you would have had to push somewhere you weren't comfortable with. But we don't want to leave anything on the table. And so you really want to get the offer to where, like, truly you could call them and say, somebody else came in $5,000 higher than us and they got the property, and they would say, okay, that's all right. For $5,000 more, it's not worth it to me. So that's the balance. And that's true in this insane market, but that's always been my go-to. If we're in a multiple offer situation, it's just, I can't tell you where to go, because I'm not going to pay your mortgage, and I'm not going to be the one who's opening the door at the end of the night to come home. So you have to decide what this property is worth to you. Whatever that number is, just make sure this is where that falls. And then that way, no matter what happens, we can feel good about it. I'm also future pacing them at that point to feel good about it, so that it's not like a broken down conversation. And it has changed how it's responded to when I have to call and say, hey, we didn't get the property. So, well, that's all right. We feel good about where we put in our offer, so we'll just get the next one. It's like, that is a much more comfortable conversation. Like, it's totally selfish, but it's a much more comfortable conversation for me to have. And it's also a better conversation for them to be having. So, so you want to get to there on pricing. You want to get to there on terms. Don't leave anything on the table. Also be aware of, unless they're like buying at their very max and they can't push any higher for the loan, know what the difference in their monthly payment is for every $5,000, because they buy at the price, but they live in that payment. And you will have people that feel like, oh, no, this is the very most I can spend on this house. And then they look at the payment and they're like, oh, wait, that's only $22 more a month. Yeah, let's go ahead and offer more. Like, so just know what those numbers are, so that as you're going through and looking at the difference between offering $550 or $575, they know what that really translates to their payments. They can make an informed decision. When you get the offer all dialed in, put it all together, do not submit to the listing agent without having it all together. As somebody who has fielded 30, 40, 50 offers, like, that is intense and overwhelming enough. When it comes through in 4 different emails and half the pages are turned one direction and half the other, and I have to figure out how they correlate, like, just send it to the perfect thing. So, and you want to make sure that the pre-approval letter is in there. Any supplemental documentation that you're sending over, just put it all together in one nice little package. If you are sending through something that requires them to go on a portal like Dotloop, please make sure that you attach a PDF as well, so that they do not have to go through that portal. And keep in mind who you're sending the offer to. You know, if you're talking to someone who's super tech savvy, it's gonna be fine. If you're talking to the agent who still handwrites all of their offers on the hood of a car and then goes and finds a fax machine in 1990 and somehow sends it to the listing agent, like, you want to be aware of that. You may be talking their hand, like holding their hand through opening PDFs, and just be the agent that's ready to do that. I will always have my lender on standby. And the minute that I hit send on the offer, the lender calls the listing agent to confirm how great these guys are. And I will usually give the lender some intel from our conversation. So you're going to be talking to Dwight. He's an old school agent. This is how he's feeling about the process. He just wants to make sure that it's a really clean offer and that it's going to get to the finishing line at the same terms. Then Braxton, the lender, is going to have that conversation without ever having had that conversation with Dwight to begin with. That's going to do one of 2 things. Either one, Dwight will realize I fed Braxton all that information and it got regurgitated to him, which is great. It lets Dwight know that I actually listened and care about what's important to him and what's important to his client. Or 2, he won't realize, and he'll just hear everything from the lender about this client that he's been waiting to hear about, the dream client, which either way we win. So the lender's ready to call, and sometimes they're great conversations, and sometimes the agent gets off the phone with them really fast. That's okay. Every single offer, that's always what we're doing. And then always confirm that the offer was received. Things happen. Things get sent to spam. Agents don't realize they come through, especially when there's a lot of offers being fielded. It's easy for your stuff to slip through the cracks. So just never assume that it was received. Make sure you get that confirmation. No, you're
How do
fine.
you confirm, Robin?
Totally depends on the agent I'm talking to. So if they like texting, I get a text. If they like to talk on the phone, talk on the phone. If I call, like, let's say that they're one who likes talking on the phone and I call and I don't get them, I'm gonna keep following up until I get them, or until they shoot me an email or a text letting me know that I got the offer. So just never ever, like, it's like core representation of your client, like making sure that their offer actually gets reviewed. You can't control how it gets responded to, but you can control doing everything that you can to make sure that it gets a shot. So I guess I should write down number 3, right?
Oh, you don't have to.
So complete
While
offer.
you're doing that, did you guys hear, her lender knows her expectations, right? Do you think it's pretty important to have these conversations with your lenders now and say, when I'm with my buyer, or there's expectations in general, this is the way I operate, is this something that we can partner with? And then on top of that, hey, I have my buyer, we're going out to view stuff, we think we're gonna put an offer in, maybe hearing from you in about, 2 hours, something along those lines, or, other expectations, I may need a pre-approval with a different dollar amount on it here in a few minutes. We think we're gonna put an offer. So have these conversations. We've talked about future facing a couple of times, but have these conversations with your partners and your clients.
The other thing that I'm really future pacing clients for right now is an expectation that we will write 7 beautiful, pristine, super aggressive, super solid, amazing offers to get 1 accepted. And the more you are prepping them for that, now, in honesty, that's a little padded for my average right now, but I would rather they be prepared for the padded and pleasantly surprised when we get 1 in 5 or in 4 than have them feel like I've written 4 offers and they've been like offering my right arm and we're never going to get something accepted. If you have that conversation in the beginning, then when they get scared or frustrated with the process, you can jump back to, I know this is really so hard and we're right on target. You've written 4 really super strong offers, which means we are still below the average to get a buyer accepted in this market. So I know it's difficult, but keep the faith. It just, they need to know that it's okay and that it's going to be okay. And we know that, but they don't necessarily know that. And this is especially for people who are buying a house, who have purchased before. This is so different than the experience in a traditional market. And so it's just setting those expectations and having them know, like, this is normal and it doesn't mean we're not going to find your property. This is normal and it doesn't mean you're never going to get an offer accepted. Now, if they're making offers that aren't going to get accepted, then that also gives us the ability to say, hey, we should be getting an offer accepted within 7 and we're not. So let's look at what might be off with the offers that we're submitting and what we may need to change in order to get an offer accepted in this market. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. Then in this market, if we don't get an offer accepted, so let's look at a different market. So if you're in more of a buyer-friendly market, and maybe you have a listing and it's going to be on market for 90, 120 days, you're going to have a lot of showings in that time, and most of them aren't going to submit an offer. And so as agents, what we do is we get feedback, right? So we say, hey, you showed my house on 123 Main. And they say, oh yeah, it was nice, but the kitchen was a little funny. And you get that feedback and you take it to your client and you say, okay, this is how the market is responding to our property, right? In this market, I still ask for feedback, but I'm going to be really honest. The feedback is, did you send me an offer that was $50,000 above list price, or did you not? Because it's all moving so fast, we don't have time to gather that feedback. But I do have time to gather it for my buyers. And so it's sort of flipped when I'm seeking feedback. If we submit an offer and it's not accepted, I want to know why. Do it. I want to know why. Is there something we could have done to make our offer more enticing to buyers? And I'm gonna back up a little bit. Before you have this conversation, you gotta make the agent feel okay about it. Like, hey, listen, they're gonna be disappointed, I'm disappointed, but I completely understand. This is a crazy market. Hey, let me ask you a question. Is there something we could have done different with our offer that would have made a difference, that could have gotten it accepted? The feedback you may get is that, no, we got an offer that was $100,000 over and it was cash and there's nothing you could have done to compete. Okay, then at least you know that's what you're competing against. But if there's terms you can shift, so I had one client who was hell-bent on, when they submitted an offer, if there was going to be a lease back, they wanted some compensation for that lease back, because that was only right, that was only fair, and they were really kind of stuck in that. So then we lost out on a house, and the feedback that I got was, well, they were a little thrown, honestly, by the fact that your clients wanted something to lease back, and they chose an offer that didn't ask for anything. So that was then feedback that I could take to the clients and say, hey, listen, I'm with you. I understand if they're saying it past close, that's a concession and there should be some compensation. Something we just might want to look at is that that compensation is $1,500. And so it may be that we're losing properties over $1,500. Would it make more sense for us to just offer $1,500 less and give them the lease back for free? So use that feedback to inform how you make your next offers with that client. I'll ask if there's something we could have done different with the offer, and then I'll ask, what is it that made the decision for your clients with the offer that they did accept? And then again, congratulate them, tell them to get some rest in this insane market, and that hopefully their phone stops, ringing off for a minute. Be human. Chances are you're going to be making an offer on another one of their properties, and it would be good for you to endear yourselves to them so that they go, oh man, that's a really nice guy. I really want to accept this offer. Let's see what we can do. Any other questions on submitting offers? Does it seem like I covered?
This isn't about the offer, but this is about the process. Like, when it comes to maybe clients who seem kind of high S, like sleep on it type of people, like, I don't know, what techniques do you use, like in situations like showings where you understand that you guys need to act quickly and you try to explain that to them, but what do you do in that kind of situation?
So if that's a personality type that I am working with, I will try to get ahead of them telling me that they need to sleep on that decision.
Yeah.
If we're walking through a house and I can tell that they like it more than they don't, and like you'll get to a point where it's like, you know when they are going to offer, when they're not, even if they're like, yeah, I think I'm going to offer on this. You're like, sure.
Yeah.
And like, you'll get to where but if I'm seeing that kind of behavior, either while we're still in the showing or when we walk out to the car, I'll say, listen, Carly, this is a really big decision. And so I know that this is a good house. You guys are going to be thinking about it, potentially putting in an offer. This is the kind of decision that would make a whole lot of sense for you to sleep on before you finalized it. And so I just wanted to talk about that a little bit, because in this market, we're needing to get an offer in that first 24 hours. Or I've talked to the agent and I know they're reviewing offers today. So we don't have much time before we put this together. But I just want you to know you're going to have time to sleep on this decision before anything is finalized. So if this is one that you decide that you're going to offer on, we're going to put it all together. We're going to get it submitted so that it can get a review. If at any point up until X, you change your mind, we're going to cancel. And you're not out anything. 5 minutes that it took you to click through and sign the document, that's it. So, and I want you to know, Carly, I'm okay canceling offers. I would rather cancel offers all day long than have us delay on submitting an offer on the right one and miss it. So if this is one you decide you want to offer on, just know we're going to need to get that submitted tonight, but also know you're not just going to have a night to sleep on it. You're going to have 4 nights to sleep on it. You're going to have 3 nights, whatever you're building into the contract as far as your days. Makes sense?
Yeah.
But it is so much easier to handle the objection if you anticipate it and address it before they even say it than when you are responding to it. Because if they throw the objection out to you and you're responding to it, then it's like a conflict, right? Then you're getting them to change their thinking. If you bring the objection to them before they present it, then it's, oh my gosh, she just gets me. She just understands. She just knows. And so you're cementing an original thought pattern rather than breaking a thought pattern that they've already expressed. Makes sense?
Yeah, that's helpful.
Good. And yeah, the more, like, if you get an objection, like as you're building this skill set, like notice, okay, this is the objection I got. These are the indicators I could have looked at to know this objection was coming, and then you'll be able to start looking for it. So you'll get more objections early on in your career as you figure that out, but the more you get that dialed in, like, honestly, if I get an objection, it surprises me at this point because I should have had that conversation in advance, so. Makes sense? I think that's about it on buyers. Let's see, is there anything else that I wanted to cover on that? No. Do we want to talk about listings, receiving listings? Are we receiving offers on listings?
Does anyone?
Yeah.
You submit an offer. You know, only 24 hours or 48 hours?
It's a great question. So I will see agents try and like squeeze listing agents by having shorter deadlines. Like, what, are you gonna walk away? Like if I come back at like 26 hours later, you're like, no, we moved on. Like, come on. So talk to the agent and see what they want to see. And I'll use that as an opportunity to align myself with the agent. So if they say, well, you know, it's crazy, we're gonna plan on reviewing offers tomorrow at noon, so I should be able to get an answer tomorrow at 5. I'll say, great, so you know what, let's give you until Wednesday at 9 a.m. Is that gonna make it easier? Perfect. Because then it's, again, I'm creating that path of least resistance, and they don't have to send me a counteroffer if they're just gonna accept our offer as is, and I'm the agent who gets it. And the more they want to work with you, like, it's not gonna overcome, it shouldn't overcome a difference in the net price to their client. But if it's close, they're going to be more likely to tell the client, hey, this agent's really great to work with, then you're more likely to get the offer. That example that I gave with the whole funny GIF thing and the conversation that happened back and forth, my friend that he ended up getting his client's offer accepted, they weren't the best offer. But the agent had a great time talking with him and felt like it was somebody that really got it and got him. And so he called and said, hey, my client gave me permission to tell you this is where our best offer is at. If you beat it, it's yours. That never would have happened if that alignment hadn't been made. And it's not going to work every time, but it is going to work sometimes, but only if you do it every time.
I think even if they don't drive, I shouldn't say drive their client, but you know what I mean by that. Even if they aren't saying this person's super easy to work with, they won't be able to help while they're presenting offers to say, yeah, Robin has everything in line, everything's filled out correctly. It's amazing how often, you've seen this also, I think, and Krista saw this, how often people do not submit things correctly. But yeah, they're going to be presenting your offer whether they realize it or not, that this is something well put together. I feel good about this offer. Mm-hmm. I don't know how else to say that. If they don't say
even if they don't say anything, there it's just that subliminal, like, this is one that I like. I mean, it shows up in like tests all the time, right? Where like you can see how somebody feels about something, other people can sense how they feel about it, even if they never say anything about it. So the other thing, did we talk about cover letters at all?
Cover letters or anything.
Okay, so anytime you're submitting, like I said, you want it to be complete, have all of the information in one email. And then I will always put in the body of the email highlights of what the offer contains. So, and I'll put it in bullet points. So again, if you know the personality type of the agent that you're talking to, you know a little bit more how they need to be spoken to, but really often agents are forwarding these things onto their clients and you have no idea what personality type their clients are. And so I will do a highlighted, a few just blurbs about the offer. We came in $50,000 over list price, waived this contingency, blah, 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 whatever nice things you could say about it. And then I will have a paragraph form where I talk about how amazing these buyers are. And anything that you can talk about your buyers as far as really steady employment history and not at risk at all in times of COVID, or working with my preferred lender, and he has a 100% track record that if you get somebody pre-qualified, they actually are able to qualify at the terms that he set out originally. So your clients can feel confident that this is going to make it to the finish line at the same terms we agreed to begin with. or they love the neighborhood, their sister lives around the corner, they've been waiting for a house to pop up here. This is the only house that they're offering on. In this market, if it is the only house that your clients have an offer on, include that. Because there are, out of necessity, buyers making offers on so many properties. And so then if an agent accepts yours, if the seller accepts yours, but then another one gets accepted, are you gonna bail on them? So if it's not the only one they're offering, I'm just gonna say it, but if it is, like, highlight that, really just lean into whatever the strengths are of your buyer. And I do like that in paragraph form, so that if I am dealing with a more warm, touchy, feely I or S personality, that they like that. The season look at all of the details of everything and how it's put together, so it doesn't matter. And then the bullet points are gonna work for the driver and gonna hit the things that are most important to them. And then I will always give the agent some little accolade, especially if we talked. Don't go overboard, but just something a little bit that's nice, because they're more likely to forward it on to their client if it says something good about them. So now I think that's really it.
So you said put the paragraph and the bullet points?
Yep, I start with the bullet points, because the
Okay.
D doesn't want to scroll through the
Right.
whole email to find it. So I put the bullet points, and then I do a paragraph, and then sign off, and it's all attached when I hit send, and then the lender calls.
Cool. Do you send a buyer letter?
If my clients have provided a buyer letter, I will forward one on.
Okay.
We can get into sticky situations as far as fair housing goes. You don't want to steer your clients to, you don't want to steer your clients to stay recorded. We don't want to steer clients, period. But you don't want to give your clients too much direction, even with that letter, because you could put yourself into a tricky position. But if they provide one, then I'm going to forward it. And if you're talking about somebody who has an emotional attachment to the property, there are times that that's going to make a difference. But I will always do the warm fuzzies, not about who they are specifically or their family status or anything like that that could cause
Right.
issues, but just talking about the strengths of them and how endeared they are to the property in that paragraph. So, and then if I do include a buyer letter, sometimes I will just stipulate, my buyer's asking for that along, so it's attached. Feel free to share with your clients if you so choose. I think it was in a training here that I heard this verbiage and I loved it. And it was that I'm not attempting to get you to attach to these clients. I just want you to be aware of how attached they are to the property. So that, because that's what matters. It's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you like them or not, but if they're attached to property, then it's going to get through to a successful transaction. Anything else? Good. All right. So reviewing offers with listing clients. How are we on time? Do you want to hit that?
We're good. We have about 15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So when you are fielding a high number of offers, so i.e. anytime you have a listing in our current market, I like to put those in a spreadsheet form so that we can look at them kind of at a glance. Then I'll order the spreadsheet so that the highest net offer is on top. From there, we do highest net. Then I want to know the loan terms. So is it conventional, FHA, cash, any concessions, current market I'm listing, is there an appraisal gap coverage, and then doing earnest money amount, any non-refundable earnest money, dates, and then lease back terms. So that's the spreadsheet. I build a templated one and just have it there and accessible for any listing that you have, so that you're not having to recreate the wheel every time. Even though it's an extra step to go through and put that information in there if you're doing it yourself, it is so much easier than sorting papers and shifting around and trying to keep them all straight. Then when we are filling a high volume of offers like we are now, I'm going to do the deep dive that I would do when reviewing an offer only with the top 3 to 5 offers before I call my client and we review them together. Just from a time perspective, if you did that for 30 offers, you would just never review the offers together. So the things that are non-negotiable for me when reviewing that, those top 3 to 5 is a voice-to-voice conversation with their lender. Anyone can get a pre-qual letter. I am certain that I could go out and get a pre-qual letter for a $10 million property today. And I am equally certain there is no way I could buy a $10 million property today, but they are not hard to come by. And so you want to have a conversation with that lender. You want to find out, have they verified income? Have they verified credit? Are there any documents that they're waiting on? If they're waiting on tax documents, that could cause a hang-up. That's something that you should be aware of. I will run the dates past them that the agent has put in the contract and make sure they think they can hit those dates. You know, looks like the offer came in with a financing appraisal deadline of April 22nd. Any concerns about being able to hit that? If they go, what? We know we've got an issue. Now, doesn't mean the offer's dead, but does mean that we need to make sure to get to what's real before the client's reviewing it. And then I'll ask them any red flags that you can think of that think it's that this would successfully close. Lenders aren't going to want to have egg on their face, and they know that if there's going to be an issue and this can't get all the way to successfully close, that they're going to be the ones that have to take the heat for that. So if you have that direct conversation with them, you are more likely to get those red flags from them. Not non-negotiable, and like truly, like when I say non-negotiable, like we will not review the offer until I've been able to talk to somebody voice to voice on the lending side. Just won't. Not non-negotiable, but ideal. I like to have an offer with I like to have a conversation with the agent who submitted the offer as well. The things that I like to know from them are, do they have active offers out on other properties? How long have they been looking? What is it about this property that they like? Those are the main things. Usually the conversation goes from there. It's sort of the opposite as what it is for listing agents. Like listing agents are trying to get you off the phone quickly. The buyer's agent at that point wants to be your very best friend in the world. So they're going to tell you whatever it is you need to know. And when you're having these conversations, whether it's with the listing agent or it's with the buyer's agent, whichever side of the transaction you're on, you have to talk enough to get them going. But once they start talking, shut up. Like there's nothing you're going to say to them that's going to like stand out and be the shining thing, like, oh, this is the offer that I want. Like, number one, they're going to be happier listening to themselves talk than anything else. But number two, like you are, like the whole purpose is getting information. So be quiet so you can get that information. And yeah, most successful conversations when you're on that kind of intel gathering are the ones that you say hardly anything and you have pages of notes. Those are the winning conversations. So you're going to want to get all of that information put together. Then when you're reviewing the offer with the clients, I still, if they're local, I still go old school with this with most of my clients, and I like to sit down at the kitchen table with them and go over offers. Like this is one of those touchy-feely moments that you can leave more of an impression and that you can have some real face time with your client that cements that relationship. So not always, but often. And then when it is not such a favorable market for sellers, then it's even more critical that when you're reviewing these offers, you're face to face with your client so you can gauge how they're responding to them. So there's not as much likelihood of things being misunderstood, and so that it stays a positive situation. Because I know it is hard to believe, but there are markets where you are reviewing offers that sellers are not happy with, and so just building that skill set of having those conversations face to face and building that practice is a good thing. We'll go through. I will show them the spreadsheet of all of the offers and show them, we had 32 offers. They ranged from here to here. Then I'll have the stack of the highest offers. These are the 5 offers that I've identified are the strongest. That's these here. Looking at these ones below, is there anything about these that make it so that you would want to look at these further? No. Okay, great. Let's focus on these 5. With these 5, this one had the best dates. This one had non-refundable earnest money. Like go through the different terms. At some point, they will likely ask you which one you would take. Do not bite. talk to the strengths of the offer, talk to the concerns of the offer. It's okay to say, you know, if the most important thing to you is the highest likelihood that we close at the same net price, these are the things that they've baked into this contract to give you more of those assurances. Or if the most important thing to you is the lease option, this one does have the lease option set in this way, but you never want that to be your decision. Same thing like on the buy side, if they try and loop you in with what would you offer, or never give them a definitive answer on that. So there needs to be ownership where it's appropriate for that decision, so that there can be ownership of the results of that in an appropriate place, and you do not want to take that on either way. So we'll go through, I have a highlighter with me, and I will highlight inclusions and exclusions because I want to make sure that is crystal clear. On wood, 13 years in, I've never had to buy like a piano or a fridge or something that I missed on the inclusion list, and then it had to go in the contract, so I was having to replace it for the seller. So, but the handy dandy highlighter helps with that. So make sure that they're very clear about the inclusions and exclusions. I highlight in the contract where it says that the property will be room clean and free of debris, because I like them to be clear that all of their stuff needs to be out the date and the times that we talk about. And depending on my client, if my client's like this pristine, like everything is always perfect and there was never a speck of dust when we go through the showings, then my conversation is probably like, listen, I know you're going to want to get down like on your hands and knees and scrub all the floorboards before you go. It's very, very nice, but it's not required. And you have a whole lot of moving pieces going on right now. So I just want you to know, like, this is the general condition it's expected to be in. Please don't go crazy. If my client does not live such a clean and pristine life, then it's going to be okay, so this day, just make sure these are the things that need to be done. And there's not an expectation that the floorboards need to be scrubbed, but there is an expectation that X, Y, and Z is happening. So have that conversation. I'm amazed at people that, as we've been reviewing that offer, and we get to that part, we're talking about the date of possession and we're talking about room clean and free of debris. They're like, well, wait, we have to be out on that day? Yeah, you do. So don't assume that they know that. That's how misunderstandings happen. So you don't want to have a situation where you get later in the contract and they're like, okay, so how much time do we have to move out before we have to be gone? And they're expecting they've got 2 weeks after closing and there's 24 hours. Watch that possession date. That's another one that I highlight. When you're submitting an offer, if it is a property that is occupied, no matter what, I will never make possession to be upon recording. That is a really great way to ensure that you are going to be dealing with conflict at the end of the contract. Just don't do it. Don't try and trick them into it, because they're not going to leave, and then your client's going to be there with a U-Haul and it's ugly. So if the property is occupied, I will always have that date or that possession time be at least 24 hours after closing. I like it written as hours, not as days, because then we don't have to agree on what time of the day is the day. And I don't want to get into a conversation about the definition of the word is. So it's not maybe too young for that joke, but so I like the hours just because it's really clear. Then I know if we recorded at 3:00 p.m., 24 hours later at 3:00 p.m., we get our keys. So again, jumping back to on the listing side, just make sure you go through that possession and that you're comfortable with that. And then when you accept an offer, I will make sure that we have confirmed that accepted offer. We've handled any negotiation of any counter offer before I give the bad news to the other offers in line, because you do not want to open up a conversation of, nope, your offer wasn't accepted. Oh, wait, we lost our primary offer, so now you're the winner. You're putting yourself at risk of them looking up going, wait a minute, why did the first one change their mind? And so you're less enticing and shiny and great and exciting when they were the second choice. So ideally, you get this one secured before these guys know, and then That way, if you end up jumping to the next one in line, say we're the first one and they're still super, super excited. In this market, my clients are typically not putting an offer in backup position. Primary reason for that is that buyers are having to offer on so many things, and it's unreasonable to expect that they're going to wait around for 30 days because the market's going to shoot up the price over the next 30 days. And I don't want to be married to somebody that's not married to us. And so I would rather keep them all in backup, just keep them all on file. If something happens with the primary, we'll contact everybody who's on hold first before we go back to the general market and give them the first chance to get us an offer. And then we're back on the market in 24 hours. So that's how I choose to handle it. It's total personal preference, but something to consider. There are different markets that we will always get it back up. If I'm not looking at multiple offers, if we're reviewing one offer and going under contract, then I tell my clients, my very next job is to find that backup offer for you. And we'll keep marketing until we get that backup offer. So just be adaptable to the market. Make sure that you're watching what's going on around you, because it will change how you manage and how you present offers. And then it will save you a lot of pain and anguish if you have templated the verbiage that you send out to all the agents whose offers were not accepted. And I would have templated text for the same thing. With listings, I will also have templated text and templated emails for the most common questions that I get, so that when I'm managing Grand Central Station with questions, I can just copy paste, send, rather than typing it out every single time. And if I get calls, I will very often say, and it's true, can't talk right now, but I can text. Can I answer questions for you? Or can't talk right now, but can text. What can I do? Because then they'll ask the same questions that everyone's asking, and then I can forward them the templated text, and then I just save myself a 30-minute conversation on the phone. So, name of the game when you're representing the buyers is to try and get them on the phone. Name of the game when you're representing the sellers is to try and stay off the phone as much as possible. And somewhere the two meet. So, questions on any of that? Yeah.
So like determine list price,
Mhm.
like you do the CNA, but do you go like a percentage of the CNA?
Such a great question. And it's,
Broad question.
yeah, and it's tricky in this market. So what I typically, let me jump out of this crazy market for a minute. What I have typically done is I will pull a market analysis, which I run very similar to what I expect an appraiser would do. And that's going to determine, like, line up all of these columns. Here's the value of your home. Then, because I know the market, I'm going to look at what the available competition is. And there's usually a little bit of wiggle room there. And so from there, I'll develop our competitive market analysis. And that's, yeah, on paper, this is probably the true market value of your home. But with the things that are unique about your property, with what else is available on the market, I actually expect this is where we can get an offer accepted. And then we determine the list price competitively based on knowing those two things. And that's going to change depending on what the market's doing, depending on what their motivation is. We may go in at that market value. We may come in at the competitive price. We may come in below to drive offers up. So that's more of a conversation about strategy, whereas those reports are just always kind of are what they are. In this market, I'm still doing those two things. And then we're talking about the wild, wild what if of this current market. And so it's competitive or comparative market analysis is here. Competitive is there. Here's my projection with what I'm seeing with clients that are offering on properties like this, with what I'm seeing of the last ones that have hit, or with what I'm seeing with the fact that there is nothing in this price range in this area. I wouldn't be surprised if we end up at X. With pricing, remember that it is the same thing as making a decision about what price they want to offer at, or making a decision about which offer they want to accept. It is not your decision to make, period. Your job is to advise them, to give them the information, to build some context around that information, and to tell them what might happen and what's likely to happen. Their job is to make a decision. And so that is squarely their decision, period. And then especially in this market, but really in most markets, I'm not gonna lose a listing over pricing. And I'm not going to even go out of rapport with the client over pricing. Like, I'm gonna be very honest. And I'll tell them, like, listen, I have a commitment that I talk to my sellers at least once a week at a scheduled time. And quite honestly, we're typically talking 2, 3, 4 times a week. And so I'm gonna be really honest with you about what I expect as far as this price goes, because I don't wanna get to that Tuesday afternoon call and have you tell me, but you said, you know, I have incentive to be really honest here. And so honestly, this is what I see with the price. That said, whatever you decide, I'll die on that hill. Like, I will go to bat for it. I will tell every agent in the market why it is worth that all day long. I'm gonna give it everything I've got, even if it's not the price that I think it should be, because that's my job of representing you. I just need to be really honest with you about what I'm seeing in the market. So they need to know that what I'm being honest about where I'm putting it, because nothing makes me crazier than agents that are like, oh yeah, we can totally get that price just to get somebody to list with them, and then they knew that they were never gonna get that price. Like, I'll tell you, like, I would love for you to get that price. These are the things that make me think that it may be hard to get that price. But if you tell me that's your bottom line, that's the only price you want to hit the market, let's see what the feedback is. So, but yeah, and do stay in communication with it. So don't take ownership of it, do stay in communication. And then the market's gonna decide, yes, it will do it, or no, it won't. You know, the market decides right now, you can list a home at 550, but if the market says it's worth 600, that's where it's gonna go. You're not gonna drive the price down just because you listed it lower. And in the same way, if you list a home at 600 and the market says it's worth 550, that's what it's gonna do. So you get the information, the seller decides the list price, the market decides what the final offer price to be.
You're out explaining that on the front end also. I mean, a lot of people may not be seeing it in this market, but the price reduction conversation can be a horrible conversation.
Oh yeah.
But if you're setting expectations, like, I'm gonna find out what the market is saying about your property, my job is to pull the most the market's going to bear, pay for this home. And then at this predetermined scheduled time, a week later, we'll discuss this. It's the best when they're like, okay, yeah, I guess we need to reduce our price, huh?
Yeah.
Let's have that conversation, right? But if you set it up, you're the advisor rather than, geez, Robin, she's Chris, you know what I mean?
Right.
Comparative.
Yeah, and I get good at that now. I get ready for that now, because it will happen again. And if you are preparing those skills now, if you are role playing that and you are rehearsing that, then when the market shifts, you're gonna be ready to handle it, and you'll be so much further ahead than those that are having to scramble, and you won't lose the deals that people who are having to scramble will lose. But otherwise, there will be deals lost in that meantime while that skill gets built. So, but yeah, it's preparing them, that's the conversation. And it's really great when you prepare them up front for that, because then if you're like early on in the marketing time and you don't have to do a price reduction yet, you have the opportunity to say to them, hey, listen, I know that it could be easy to say we just need to reduce our price. And we may, but we don't today. We're not there yet. There are a few things I want to try here first before I feel like we have enough information to make that decision. The more you can do that, like, it's the same thing flipping to the buyer side. I love it if we walk through a house and it's a dog. I love it if my client and I can hate that house together, and I can tell them all the reasons that I think it's the worst house I've ever seen and they should definitely never buy that house, because then it makes it so much easier that when we walk through the right house and I'm pointing out the things that are great about it, they're not going, well, she just wants to get a commission. If I just wanted a commission, I would have tried to convince them the dog was great. And it's the same thing with the listing price. You know, if you are willing to say, hey, we may have to shift this price, but we don't today, and I don't feel like we have enough information to make a decision. So as long as you're okay waiting for a little bit, I'd like to try these things first. Like, that makes it so much stronger when you do have to come back, or if you do have to come back and say, okay, we've done all of this, and now I think really the only thing left that we have to push on is price. It gives you that clout that, yeah, you really did try everything first. So.
Awesome. Any last questions? Well, thank you, Robin.
Thank you. Oh, good. I'm so glad. No, my pleasure. And y'all know where I am. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, guys, have a great one. See ya.
Robin, I had to resend that to you.
Okay, I saw